Before I do start this video, make sure to use my TCG player affiliate down below if you're looking for any of these singles that I talk about today. Also, this channel is sponsored by Arcane Fortress. If you're looking for the best deck boxes around, make sure to use my link down below in the description to check them out. One other way you can support the channel is by becoming a patron. There are some great benefits of being a patron to the channel, such as giveaways, deck advice, and more when you do join. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today in PubStomp MTG, and with the 50th year anniversary of Dungeons & Dragons, there's going to be a new secret lair coming out for it. I think 4 specifically, which is quite crazy. There's a lot of good stuff in that secret lair. My personal favorite one though is the Beholder secret lair, the one with Karazikar the Tyrant. This one did come out in the Adventures of Forgotten Realm as the backup commander for the Prosper Tomebound deck, and now it had a new facelift with some amazing new art. Karazikar the Tyrant is one I plan on building myself because of the new art. I'm a big sucker for art when it comes to a lot of deck building and the reason why I build specific decks. So for me personally, I plan on buying this one for myself and making a deck out of it. And so in this video, if you plan on building it yourself, here's some suggestions for you. Obviously, there's going to be some from that pre-con that I'm going to discuss. I'm going to also discuss new cards. So let's first read what it does. So for 3 black and a red with a 5/5 body, legendary creature Beholder. Whenever you attack a player, tap target creature that player controls and goad it. Whenever an opponent attacks another one of your opponents, you and the attacking player each draw a card and lose 1 life. So it's pretty good about this commander. It focuses on giving you card draw. Obviously you're going to lose life in that aspect, but that's not a big downside. Your opponents are going to get card draw, but there's ways that we could punish that card draw, maybe using like a Shield or the Apocalypse to really amplify the damage. But obviously the theme of this deck is goading your opponents. That's what a lot of Beholders do. I'm not too familiar with the Dungeons & Dragons lore, but I would love to hear down below in the comments what is the lore behind Karazikar. Again, it's a really cool commander, and I feel like, again, the art is just really gravitating me towards building it. So without further ado, let's get it started. Because this is a secret lair, I wanted to showcase some of the secret lair cards that actually go pretty well with the deck. The first one to highlight, Beholder's Deathray, or otherwise known as Snuff Out, is a really good card for 3 and a black. If you control a swamp, you may pay 4 life rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. So instead of paying that 4 mana cost, you could just pay 4 life and then just kill a creature. Another removal spell would be Beholder's Enervation Ray, or otherwise known as Defile. This is another great removal spell, mainly because we're on 2 colors for black and red. Most likely we're going to have a decent amount of swamps to really get this going. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp you control. So this does get past indestructible, giving it -1/-1. Some of my favorite kind of effects to play in EDH is Fling effects. So obviously they did reprint Fling as Beholder's Telekinetic Ray. Especially if you do have a big creature on the board, you can sacrifice that creature and it deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. I know it's not the most expensive reprint, but it's one that's just very fun that could close out some games if you really wanted to. Beholder's Paralyzing Ray, or otherwise known as Oblite, is another fun reprint. Whenever it does enter the battlefield, target creature phases out until Beholder's Paralyzing Ray leaves the battlefield. Tap that creature as it phases in this way. Oh, would you look at that? Another removal spell with Beholder's Disintegration Ray, or otherwise known as Fire Covenant. This is a very versatile removal spell. This one essentially is a board wipe, all at the expense of paying life. So this secret lair does come with 6 cards, which is more than the normal rate, which is kind of sad because I wish it could be at that rate, to be honest. And I really feel like you could call this secret lair just Beholder and all of its rays. I only wish one of those secret lair cards was like a Deadly Rollick. That would have been perfect, but oh well, we can't get everything we want. So those are all the cards that are coming out in the secret lair. Obviously you could just throw them all in the deck and they'll work fine because all of them are just target removal. But now let's focus on the rest of the deck and talk about some cards that I would add in personally. First and foremost, because this is a goad deck, we want to incentivize our opponents to attack each other rather than them attacking us. Because sometimes our opponent's creatures aren't going to be goaded, and when they're not goaded, they're most likely going to be attacking us. Let's incentivize them not to. One of my personal favorite options, Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor, is a great card draw option for us and also for our opponents too. Of course, on the screen I had to throw up the future sight frame that's coming out of the mystery booster too. I just hope it's not going to be too expensive because I heard it's going to be at a higher rarity. Besides that point, it does read whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay 1 life. If they do, they draw a card. So any player dealing combat damage to one of our opponents, they could draw a card. That does include ourselves. So stopping right there, I do like this for the fact that it incentivizes our opponents to attack each other for card draw. There are ways that we could punish our opponents for drawing cards in this deck. I'll mention them later on. It does have an ultimate, if you could say it that way, with 4 and triple black paying into that cost. Discard X cards. Exile the top X cards of target opponent's library. You may play lands and cast spells among those cards exiled this way without paying their mana cost. So that could be absolutely brutal, just exiling a lot of cards from your opponent's library. Most likely they're drawing a lot of cards with Gix, so they could potentially deck themselves depending on how much cards we discard. Plus, this is very nice with Karazikar's ability because whenever an opponent attacks one or more of your opponents, they don't have to be goaded with their creatures. You get to draw a card and they draw a card, so it's a win for us too. Another simple but pretty effective card is Frontier Warmonger. This was from the Murders at Karlov Manor. Whenever one or more creatures attack one of your opponents or planeswalker they control, they gain menace until end of turn. So this will give your opponent's creatures just that little extra evasion with menace. Of course, if they're attacking one of our opponents and not us. And the next card is a little bit more mean with Sower of Discord. It has the pretty gross ability: as Sower of Discord enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of those chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. So this one you gotta pick strategically because some people don't want to hit other people, then they lose life. But I feel like it's a fun way to kind of ensue chaos in the game. Technically this next creature will goad, but it does benefit our opponents for attacking each other with Death Kiss. It has the great ability: whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks one of your opponents, double its power until end of turn. And it does have a monstrosity cost for XX and a red. Monstrosity X, whenever it becomes monstrous, go up to X target creatures your opponents control. So obviously later on you can do the monstrosity cost, but really I like this in this deck for doubling the power of our opponent's creatures when they attack each other. Just that little bit of extra juice so that we make sure that they don't attack us, so that they attack each other instead, is great. Especially if some other people are ahead in the game, you can say, hey, attack them, and then your creature's power will be doubled. But now let's talk about goading, because of course goad is the big theme of this deck. There's a lot of great options on this deck that you can take advantage of. For example, Frenzy Gorespawn is incredible. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent goads target creature that player controls, and whenever more creatures attack one of your opponents, those creatures gain menace until end of turn. So this is very similar to that Frenzy Warmonger, giving your opponent's creatures menace when they attack one of our opponents, and this does give the additional benefit of goading your opponent's creatures. But let's donate creatures to our opponent's cause, like using Life of the Party and Slicer Hired Muscle. Life of the Party is great because whenever it attacks, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. It's also goaded for the rest of the game. You give everybody basically a Life of the Party with First Strike, Trample, and Haste. So it is a great way to constantly just make sure we're implementing more and more damage to our opponents. And cards like Slicer, and you could also throw in Alexios in the deck as well, are going to be incredible because they're going to essentially be attacking every single turn at our opponents because it's going to be goaded. They're going to be swinging at everybody else. But let's have a constant way of goading our opponent's creatures like Grenzo and Bothersome Quasit. These both are great because Bothersome Quasit does read: whenever you cast a non-creature spell, goad target creature the opponent controls. And plus, goaded creatures your opponents control can't block, so we can just swing at our opponents while they can't even block with their goaded creatures. Plus, this can be used as a combat trick. For example, if somebody has a big giant creature, we could just cast a non-creature spell and goad one big giant creature an opponent controls, so that way we could swing uncontested at them. Plus, with Grenzo, it has a great ability: whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, choose one goad target creature that player controls, exile the top card of the library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card and you may spend mana as low or any color to cast it. So if we have Bothersome Quasit and Grenzo on the battlefield at the same time, we're really going to cook because we're going to make sure we can swing at our opponents, goad some more creatures, and then they can't even block too. Another fun and reoccurring option would be Ghoulish Impetus. You can enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, has Death Touch, and is goaded. When enchanted creature dies, return Ghoulish Impetus to the battlefield at the beginning of the next step, and you could just enchant to another opponent's creature so that they're constantly being goaded. Another great instigator to make sure our opponents are goaded all time is by using Baloth. Creatures your opponents control with power less than Baloth's power are goaded. So basically any creature with power 2 or less are goaded unless we buff up Baloth in some way. Also, it has another great ability: whenever a goaded attacking or blocking creature dies, you create a treasure token, so it could ramp you a little bit too. Of course, there are some splashy effects that we could take advantage of with Carter Doomscourge and Disrupt Decorum. Both of these cards essentially read: goad all creatures you don't control. I know Carter has that big paragraph of text, but it's essentially just goading all creatures you don't control. But Carter does have that extra text: whenever an attacking creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I do like that last ability mainly because it could offset the life loss we do have with our opponents attacking each other, and we're drawing cards with our commander losing 1 life. So of course these are all some great goad options that you could choose in the deck, but I did want to focus on punishing our opponents for card draw. They are drawing cards with our commander and some other options in our deck. Why not throw in some cards to really amplify the damage to our opponents? First option would be Fate Unraveler for 3 and a black. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Unraveler deals 1 damage to that player. So instead of that player losing 1 life and drawing a card, they're going to be losing 2 life by drawing a card. The same can be said for Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted. It's 3 and 2 black. It's a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted, deals 1 damage to that player. Also, it does have a -2 ability: destroy target creature its controller draws 2 cards. So I like this. It has that option of just dealing 1 damage, very similar to the previous card that I mentioned, but it also does have that option of drawing 2 cards if we destroy one of our own creatures, but it can destroy another opponent's creatures. They do draw 2 cards, but they will lose 2 life. But let's talk about a card that's tearing up multiple formats with Orcish Bowmasters. So this one is quite expensive and it's quite powerful. You could obviously just proxy it if you want to put it into this deck. It does have flash, so you could react to an opponent when they're drawing cards. When Orcish Bowmasters enters, and whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, Orcish Bowmasters deals 1 damage to any target, then amass Orcs 1. So this is just one way we could keep our opponents in check for drawing too much cards. Also, we make a big giant Orc army when they draw a lot of cards. But one of the best options would be Shieldred the Apocalypse for many reasons. This is going to offset the life loss we do have when we draw a card and lose 1 life by gaining 1 life essentially. Because whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life. When our opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. So this is a pretty good rate when our opponents are attacking each other. They will lose 3 life and draw a card, and we will gain 1 life and draw a card. So that's absolutely going to be a win-win for us. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video on Karazikar the Tyrant. I wanted to make this deck tech, of course, because of the secret lair that is coming out. I'm definitely going to be planning on building this one myself because I absolutely love the art. And plus, you could say this is an updated deck tech for Karazikar the Tyrant because it's been out for quite a while, ever since the Forgotten Realms. That's like 2-3 years ago. I'm not sure on the timeline. So there has been a lot of great support cards that you can add into this deck to really juice it up. But I would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts and opinions? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stomping by.